The stars looked different from the bridge of the horizon. Commander Jake Morrison stood before the main viewport, watching the massive space station grow larger as his ship approached. Apex Prime hung in the darkness like a silver wheel, home to a dozen alien species that called themselves the Confederation. Today would mark humanity's first official meeting with them. Jake had been chosen for this mission because of his calm nature and military background. Earth's leaders wanted someone who could stay cool under pressure, but as he looked at the alien station, he felt anything but calm. This meeting would decide humanity's place in the galaxy. Captain Lisa Gardner entered the bridge, her diplomatic uniform pressed and perfect. She had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, learning everything humanity knew about alien cultures. It wasn't much. The Confederation had made contact 6 months ago, sending a simple message: come to Apex Prime to discuss Earth's future. How are you feeling? Jake asked her. Nervous, Lisa admitted. We're walking into this blind. We don't know their customs, their laws, or what they really want from us. Jake nodded. At least we're not going in unarmed. The Horizon wasn't a warship, but it carried enough weapons to defend itself. Earth's military leaders had insisted on that. Trust was good, but preparation was better. The docking process took an hour. When the airlock finally opened, 2 alien guards stood waiting. They were tall and reptilian, with silver scales and eyes that reflected the light like mirrors. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Follow us, one of them said in perfect English. The translation technology was impressive. Lisa and Jake walked through corridors filled with aliens of different species. Some had fur, others had shells, and one looked like it was made of living crystal. All of them stopped to stare at the humans. Their expressions were hard to read, but Jake didn't sense friendliness. The council chamber was enormous. 12 thrones sat in a half circle, each one occupied by a representative of a different species. At the center sat Ambassador Zekthar of the Vortok Empire, the most powerful race in the Confederation. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with dark blue skin and 4 arms. His eyes locked onto the humans with clear disdain. So these are the humans, Zekthar said, his voice deep and rumbling. How disappointing. You look fragile. Lisa stepped forward, keeping her voice steady. I am Captain Lisa Gardner, representing the United Earth Government. We come in peace, hoping to establish friendly relations with the Confederation. Zekthar laughed. Several other council members joined him. The sound echoed through the chamber, making Jake's skin crawl. Peace, Zekthar repeated as if the word amused him. You speak of peace when you don't even understand your situation. Let me explain it clearly. The Confederation has ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. Every species we encounter has 2 choices: join us willingly or be conquered. There is no third option. Lisa's expression didn't change. And what does joining you require? Simple terms, Zekthar said, leaning forward. You will give us 70% of your planet's water. You will dismantle all military forces. You will accept Confederation law and governors. In return, we will allow your species to continue existing. Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept quiet. This was Lisa's show. Those terms are unacceptable, Lisa said calmly. Earth is an independent world. We're willing to trade, to share knowledge, to cooperate, but we will not surrender our sovereignty. The chamber fell silent. The other council members looked shocked. Apparently no one had ever refused the Confederation before. Zekthar stood, his forearms spreading wide. You refuse? A species that has barely left its own solar system refuses the Confederation? This is either incredible bravery or incredible stupidity. It's neither, Lisa replied. It's simply our answer. We want peace, but not at the cost of our freedom. Another council member spoke up, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish. Perhaps the humans don't understand. The Confederation has never been refused. Species that resist are eliminated. We have weapons that can burn worlds. Your resistance would last days at most. Jake couldn't stay quiet anymore. Then you'll have a fight on your hands. Earth isn't some primitive world that will roll over because you threatened us. We've been preparing for this possibility since we first reached space. Zekthar's eyes narrowed. Preparing? You know nothing of real war. The Confederation has conquered hundreds of worlds. Your weapons are toys compared to ours. Your ships are slow and clumsy. Your tactics are outdated. You cannot win. Maybe, Jake said, but we'll make you bleed for every inch of ground. And maybe other species watching will learn that the Confederation isn't as unstoppable as you claim. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Several ambassadors demanded the humans be arrested immediately. Others called for an immediate military response. Zekthar raised one hand and silence fell. "You have made your choice," he said coldly. "The Confederation hereby declares Earth to be in violation of galactic law. We grant you 1 week to reconsider. If you do not surrender in that time, we will come to your world with our full military might. And when we are done, humanity will be nothing but a footnote in galactic history." Lisa stood tall. "If you come to Earth seeking war, you'll find it. But don't say we didn't warn you. Humanity has spent 10,000 years fighting. We're very good at it." Zekthar dismissed them with a wave. The guards escorted Lisa and Jake back to their ship. Neither human spoke until they were safely aboard the Horizon and breaking orbit from Apex Prime. "Well, that went badly," Jake said, trying to lighten the mood. Lisa sat down heavily in her command chair. "Send a message to Earth, Priority 1. Tell them we're coming home and tell them to prepare for war." Jake moved to the communications station. As he composed the message, he looked back at the shrinking space station. The Confederation thought humanity would be an easy target. They thought Earth's military was primitive and weak. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Back on Earth, Admiral Ben Clark received the message in his office at Fleet Command. He read it twice, then called an emergency meeting. Within an hour, every high-ranking military officer on the planet was gathered in the war room. General Ryan Foster spread his hands on the table. "So they rejected our peaceful approach. They want submission or war." "That's correct," Clark said. "Captain Gardner did everything she could, but the Confederation doesn't negotiate. They demand obedience." Colonel Kate Sullivan pulled up a star map. "Their fleet will arrive in approximately 2 weeks, maybe less if they push hard. We need to activate all defense protocols now." "Already done," Clark said. "Every orbital platform is coming online. All reserve forces are being called up. Project Vanguard is entering its final phase." Ryan smiled grimly. "The Confederation thinks we're primitive because we still use kinetic weapons. They've forgotten that sometimes the old ways work best." Kate nodded. "Their ships are designed to fight other energy-based weapons. Plasma shields, energy barriers, all built to deflect beams and bolts. But a chunk of metal moving at high velocity? That's different." Clark stood and looked at the assembled officers. "Humanity has fought wars since we climbed down from the trees. We've perfected the art of killing each other over thousands of years. The Confederation has had peace for so long, they've forgotten what real combat looks like. When they arrive, we're going to remind them." The officers began filing out, each heading to their assigned posts. The machinery of war was beginning to turn. Factories that had been secretly building weapons for decades went into full production. Soldiers who had trained for an enemy they hoped would never come prepared to face them. Scientists made final adjustments to weapon systems that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. Jake and Lisa arrived back on Earth 3 days later. They were immediately taken to meet with the military council. Lisa gave her full report, holding nothing back about the Confederation's arrogance and power. "They truly believe we're no threat," she concluded. "They're so confident that they're probably sending a smaller force than they should." "Good," Clark said. "Let them underestimate us. It will make our response more effective." Jake looked at the Admiral. "What's our plan, sir?" Clark pulled up a tactical display. "We let them come. We make them think they're winning. And then we hit them with everything we've got. The Confederation is about to learn that humanity doesn't give up. We don't surrender. And we never ever stop fighting." The Confederation fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 300 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built, began their approach toward the small blue planet. On the flagship, Fleet Commander Tarshan watched the tactical display with satisfaction. "Such a tiny world," he said to his second officer, "and they dared to refuse us." "The scans show orbital defenses," the officer reported. "Platforms with primitive kinetic weapons, some missile batteries, nothing that can penetrate our shields," Tarshan nodded. This would be over quickly. The Confederation had conquered dozens of worlds, and Earth would be no different. He almost felt sorry for the humans. Almost. Begin the advance. Full speed to their homeworld. "Let's end this before lunch." The fleet moved forward, their plasma cannons charging, their shields at full strength. They passed Neptune's orbit without incident. Jupiter loomed ahead, its massive form dominating the view. On Earth, Admiral Clark watched the enemy fleet's progress from the command center buried deep beneath fleet headquarters. The entire room was filled with tactical displays, communication stations, and military personnel tracking every movement. "They're taking the direct route," Lieutenant Commander Eric Hayes reported from his station. "No attempt at flanking or strategy. They're just coming straight at us, arrogant," Clark said. "They think this will be easy. Let them keep thinking that. Are all platforms ready?" "Yes, sir. Every railgun and missile battery is hot and waiting. The enemy will be in range in 20 minutes. Clark turned to his communications officer. "Send the message to all forces. Hold fire until my command. Let them get close." The Confederation fleet continued its advance. As they approached Jupiter, they detected Earth's defense fleet. 40 human warships, each one bristling with weapons, moved to intercept. Tarshan laughed when he saw them. "Only 40 ships? The humans are either braver or more foolish than I thought. All vessels prepare to fire. Target their command ships first." Commander Amy Chen commanded the Earth Defense Fleet from the Bridge of the Freedom. She was young for such a position, only 32, but she had spent her entire adult life training for this moment. Her crew was ready. Every system checked and double-checked. "Enemy fleet entering firing range," her tactical officer announced. "Hold position," Amy ordered. "Let them make the first move." The Confederation ships opened fire. Brilliant bolts of plasma shot across space, lighting up the darkness like deadly fireworks. The energy weapons struck Earth ships and the shields flared as they absorbed the impact. "Shields holding," the tactical officer reported. "Minimal damage," Tarshan frowned. He had expected the human shields to collapse immediately. Perhaps they had better technology than the intelligence report suggested. No matter. He ordered a second volley. More plasma bolts hammered the human fleet. The shields flickered but held. Amy smiled. Earth scientists had spent years studying captured Confederation technology from ancient wrecks found drifting in space. They had learned how to defend against energy weapons. "Return fire," Amy commanded. "Launch missiles, pattern Delta." Hundreds of missiles erupted from the human ships, streaking toward the Confederation fleet. Tarshan barely glanced at them. Energy shields were designed specifically to stop such attacks. The missiles detonated harmlessly against the alien shields, creating spectacular explosions, but doing no real damage. The Confederation crews cheered, certain of their victory. "Is that the best they can do?" Tarshan's second officer asked. "Apparently. Prepare to close range and finish them." But Amy wasn't done. The missile attack had been a test, a distraction. Now came the real assault. "Activate railgun platforms," she ordered. "Full power. Fire everything." Hidden throughout the solar system, dozens of massive railgun platforms came online. They had been built in secret over decades, positioned at strategic points from Saturn's rings to the asteroid belt. Each platform had been designed for one purpose: to accelerate heavy metal projectiles to incredible speeds. The tungsten penetrators launched. They were simple objects, just dense metal rods, but they were moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light. There was no flame, no exhaust, nothing to give away their approach. They were nearly invisible until impact. The first rounds hit the Confederation fleet before anyone could react. The energy shields, which worked perfectly against plasma and lasers, did nothing against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The physics were simple and brutal. The projectiles carried so much kinetic energy that nothing could stop them. The lead Confederation cruiser simply exploded. The tungsten rod punched through the shield like it wasn't there, tore through the hull and exited the other side, leaving a massive hole. The ship broke apart, venting atmosphere and crew into space. More rounds hit. Ship after ship suffered the same fate. Hulls were ripped open, engines destroyed, weapons systems obliterated. In the first 30 seconds, 20 Confederation vessels were reduced to floating wreckage. Tarshan stared at his tactical display in shock. "What just happened? How are they penetrating our shields?" "Unknown, Commander. The weapons appear to be solid projectiles moving at extreme velocity. Our shields can't disperse the kinetic energy." Another wave of railgun rounds slammed into the fleet. The Confederation ships tried to maneuver, but the projectiles were too fast to dodge. 47 ships were destroyed before Tarshan regained his composure. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Return fire on those platforms." The Confederation fleet scattered, breaking formation as captains tried to avoid the invisible death raining down on them. They fired wildly at the suspected locations of the railgun platforms, but the platforms were heavily armored and shielded. Most of the plasma bolts missed entirely. Amy watched the chaos unfold. Second wave. Target their flagship. The railguns fired again. This time, the rounds were aimed specifically at Tarshin's massive command ship. The first shot missed by meters. The second struck the ship's port side, tearing away an entire section of hull. The third hit the engine core. Alarms screamed throughout the flagship. Tarshin was thrown from his command chair as the ship shuddered. Damage report. Engine 3 is destroyed. Hull breach on decks 7 through 15. Shields are failing. Commander, we need to retreat. Tarshin couldn't believe it. The Confederation hadn't retreated from a battle in over 1,000 years. But he was watching his fleet being torn apart by an enemy that wasn't supposed to be able to fight back. All ships, fall back to Mars orbit. Regroup and reassess. The Confederation fleet turned and fled. The human ships pursued for a short distance, launching more missiles and firing their own kinetic cannons. Another dozen alien ships were destroyed in the retreat. When the battle finally ended, the Confederation had lost 63 vessels. Earth had lost none. In the command center, Clark allowed himself a small smile. Status of our fleet? Some damage, but all ships operational, Eric reported. Ammunition reserves at 60%. All platforms are functional. Good. This was just the opening round. They'll be back, and they'll be ready for our tactics next time. Jake Morrison entered the command center, having watched the battle from a different station. Sir, we just received word from our scout ships. The Confederation is regrouping at Mars, but they're not retreating from the solar system. I didn't expect them to, Clark said. Tarshin is probably calling for reinforcements right now. The Confederation can't afford to lose to us. If word spreads that we defeated them, every subjugated species in their empire will start getting ideas. Lisa Gardner stood beside Jake, her expression serious. How long until they attack again? Days, maybe a week, Clark replied. They'll study what happened, adjust their tactics, and come at us with a different approach. We hurt them badly, but this war is far from over. On the Confederation flagship, now limping in Mars orbit, Tarshin stared at the casualty reports. Thousands of his crew were dead. Dozens of ships destroyed. And by what? Primitive kinetic weapons that should have been obsolete. How could intelligence have been so wrong? He demanded. The humans were supposed to be easy prey. His science officer stepped forward nervously. Commander, I've analyzed the battle data. The humans didn't use advanced technology. They used simple physics. Mass times velocity equals force. By accelerating dense projectiles to extreme speeds, they created weapons that our defenses can't stop. Then we adjust our defenses. It's not that simple, sir. Energy shields work by dispersing incoming energy, but kinetic energy from a physical object? That requires different technology. We haven't needed it in centuries. Tarshin slammed his fist on the console. Then develop it. I don't care what it takes. And send a message to the High Council. Tell them we need more ships. The humans are more dangerous than we thought. The message went out, traveling across light years to reach Apex Prime. When Ambassador Zekthar read it, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Concern. The Confederation had built its empire on the assumption of technological superiority. But the humans had found a weakness, a gap in their defenses that no one had thought to protect against. Back on Earth, celebrations were brief. The military commanders knew this was just the beginning. The Confederation would send more ships, and eventually, sheer numbers would overwhelm Earth's. The war room was filled with tension as Admiral Clark laid out his plan. Every senior officer in Earth's military was present, their faces reflecting the weight of what they were about to attempt. We can't just sit here and wait for them to attack again, Clark said, pointing at the star map. Defense wins battles, but offense wins wars. We need to hit them where it hurts. General Ryan Foster leaned forward. You're talking about taking the fight to Confederation space. That's a huge risk. Everything about this war is a risk, Clark replied. But right now they're still reeling from their losses. They think we're stuck defending Earth. If we strike at their supply lines and colonies, we'll keep them off balance. Colonel Kate Sullivan studied the map. The nearest Confederation outpost is on Kepler 442b. It's a supply hub, lightly defended because it's deep in their territory. They've never been attacked there. Exactly, Clark said. We hit it fast and hard, take what we can and get out. The psychological impact alone will be worth it. Jake Morrison spoke up. Who leads the strike force? Clark turned to face the room. Captain Chris Palmer. He's got experience in fast assault tactics, and his ship is the quickest we have. Chris Palmer stood near the back of the room. He was a quiet man, known for getting results without making noise about it. I'll need at least 5 ships, sir, and full authority to make tactical decisions on the fly. You'll have it, Clark confirmed. Pick your crews and leave within 24 hours. The longer we wait, the more time they have to reinforce their positions. The briefing ended and officers scattered to their assignments. Chris immediately went to gather his team. He chose captains he trusted, people who could think fast and adapt to changing situations. 2 days later, Chris's strike force jumped into the Kepler system. The planet hung in space like a brown and green marble, orbiting a star slightly smaller than Earth's sun. Orbiting the planet were 3 Confederation supply stations and a small garrison fleet of 12 ships. They don't even have their shields up, Chris's tactical officer noted. They really weren't expecting anyone to attack them here. Use that to our advantage, Chris ordered. All ships, weapons hot. Target the garrison fleet first. Lauren, start jamming their communications. I don't want them calling for help. Lieutenant Lauren Mitchell worked quickly at her station. She was the best cyber warfare specialist Earth had, capable of breaking into almost any computer system. Within minutes, she had hacked into the Confederation's communication network and filled it with false signals and corrupted data. Jamming successful, Captain. They can't send or receive anything clean. Good. All ships. Attack pattern Omega. Take out those garrison ships before they know what hit them. The Earth ships accelerated, their railguns already spinning up to speed. The Confederation garrison crews were relaxed, completely unprepared for combat. Some were eating meals. Others were performing routine maintenance. None of them were ready for war. The first salvo caught them completely by surprise. Tungsten rounds tore through 3 ships before anyone could react. The remaining 9 vessels scrambled to raise shields and power weapons, but they were too slow. Chris's fleet moved with precision, each ship targeting a specific enemy. They had trained for this kind of attack for months, practicing the timing until it was perfect. Within 10 minutes, all 12 garrison ships were destroyed or disabled. No survivors? Chris asked. A few escape pods launched from the last 2 ships, his tactical officer replied. Should we retrieve them? Let them go. We're here for the supply stations, not prisoners. Yet, the 3 supply stations hung helplessly in orbit. They were massive structures, each one the size of a small city, but they had no weapons. They were built for storage and logistics, not combat. Chris opened a communication channel to the stations. Confederation personnel. This is Captain Chris Palmer of the Earth Defense Force. Surrender immediately and you won't be harmed. Resist and we'll blow you out of space. There was a long pause. Then a voice responded, speaking in broken English. You are humans? From Earth? How are you here? That's not your concern. Are you surrendering or not? We surrender. Please don't destroy the stations. Many civilians are aboard. Smart choice. Major Brooks, take your Marines and secure those stations. I want their computers intact. Lieutenant Mitchell, you're with them. Download everything you can from their databases. Major Danny Brooks led a company of Earth Marines onto the supply stations. They moved through the corridors in full combat gear, expecting resistance. But the Confederation personnel offered none. Most of them just stood with their hands up, clearly terrified. They're scared of us, one Marine commented. Good, Danny replied. Fear keeps people honest. Secure all exits and get those civilians into a safe area. Mitchell, find their computer cores. Lauren moved through the station with a team of technicians. The Confederation used different technology, but the basic principles were the same. She found the main computer core within an hour and began downloading everything she could access. Captain, you need to see this, she said over the communication link. Their databases have information on every Confederation military installation in this sector. Fleet movements, supply routes, defense plans, everything. Chris felt a surge of excitement. This intelligence was worth more than the stations themselves. Copy everything. We're taking it all back to Earth. While Lauren worked, Danny's Marines secured the rest of the stations. They found warehouses full of supplies, weapons, and technology. Captain Nicole Stevens, Danny's second-in-command, organized the Marines to start loading the most valuable items onto the Earth ships. We could spend weeks hauling all this stuff, she said. What's the priority? Weapons, technology, and anything that looks important, Danny replied. Food and basic supplies are secondary. We can make those ourselves. In the station's command center, Danny found a Confederation officer who seemed more composed than the others. The alien was tall and thin, with purple skin and large black eyes. You're in charge here? Danny asked. I am Station Commander Velcor. I must protest this attack. We are a peaceful supply station, not a military target. You support a military that tried to conquer Earth. That makes you a legitimate target. Now I need information. How long until reinforcements arrive? Velcor hesitated, then sighed. Our fastest ships could reach here in 3 days. But with your jamming, they don't know we're under attack. You probably have a week before anyone comes looking. Good. That gives us time to take what we need. For 6 days, Chris's strike force looted the supply stations. They took advanced weapons, shield generators, sensor arrays, and computer equipment. Lauren spent days downloading information, building a database of Confederation military intelligence that would give Earth a massive advantage. On the 6th day, as they were preparing to leave, Lauren discovered something that made her stop cold. Captain, I found something in their classified files. The Confederation hasn't fought a real war in over 1,000 years. They've only done subjugation campaigns against species that couldn't fight back. Chris moved to her station. Explain. Their military doctrine is based entirely on overwhelming force against inferior opponents. They have no experience with guerrilla tactics, no protocols for asymmetric warfare, nothing about fighting an enemy that can actually hurt them. Their entire military philosophy is based on intimidation, not combat. So they're bullies who've never been punched back. Exactly. And there's more. The subjugated species aren't happy. The Confederation rules through fear and superior technology. But there are resistance movements on dozens of worlds. They're just too weak and disorganized to do anything. Chris thought about this. Copy those files separately. Command will want to see them. If those resistance movements had help, weapons, and coordination, they could cause real problems for the Confederation. Intelligence Officer Brandon Wright was brought in to interrogate Velcor properly. He was a former detective who had joined the military specifically for this role. He knew how to get information without using force. Tell me about the Confederation military, Brandon said casually, sitting across from Velcor in a small room. I'm just a supply officer. I don't know much about military operations. But you see the ships come and go. You process supply orders. You hear things. For example, how did your people react when they heard about the battle at Earth? Velcor looked away. There was shock, fear. No one believed that humans could defeat a Confederation fleet. Some thought the reports were wrong, that it must have been some kind of mistake. And the High Council? What's their reaction? They're angry, embarrassed. Ambassador Zekthar demanded a massive response, but others on the council are worried about the cost. Conquering Earth was supposed to be easy and profitable. Now it's turning into an expensive war. Brandon leaned back. What about the other subjugated species? Are they watching this? Velcor met his eyes. Everyone is watching. The Confederation has ruled for so long that most species forgot what freedom looks like. But now seeing humans fight back and win, it's making people think. Making them wonder if the Confederation is as powerful as they claim. That's what I thought. Thank you, Commander. You've been very helpful. When the interrogation ended, Brandon went directly to Chris. The emergency session of the Confederation High Council was unlike anything in recent history. Ambassadors from all 12 species gathered at Apex Prime, their faces showing anger, fear, and confusion. News of the attack on Kepler 442b had spread quickly, and the implications were clear. Humanity was not going to be an easy conquest. Ambassador Zekthar stood before the council, his forearms gesturing wildly. This is unacceptable. A supply station deep in our territory, destroyed by primitives from a backwater planet. We are the laughingstock of the galaxy. A council member from the insectoid Kresh species clicked her mandibles. Perhaps if you had negotiated instead of threatening, we wouldn't be in this situation. Negotiated? Zekthar roared. With humans. They are nothing. Insects to be crushed. Insects that just destroyed 63 of our warships and 3 supply stations, another council member pointed out. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. Never, Zekthar said. I propose we assemble the Grand Fleet. 1,000 ships, the largest force ever gathered. We will crush Earth so completely that no other species will ever dare to resist us again. The council debated for hours. Some members argued for peace, for negotiation, for finding a solution that didn't involve more bloodshed. But Zekthar was persuasive, and fear was a powerful motivator. If the Confederation couldn't defeat one small planet, what would that say about their power? How long before other subjugated species started rebelling? In the end, the vote was close, but Zekthar won. The Grand Fleet would be assembled, commanded by Supreme Commander Kelthor, the most experienced military leader the Confederation had. If anyone could crush humanity, it was him. Kelthor received his orders on his homeworld and immediately began planning. Unlike Tarshan, he didn't underestimate the humans. He studied every report from the battles, analyzed the tactics, and understood what he was facing. The humans fight like nothing we've seen before, he told his senior staff. They use simple weapons in complex ways. They're creative, adaptable, and most importantly, they're experienced. This species has been at war with itself for thousands of years. They know combat in a way we've forgotten. Then how do we defeat them? His tactical officer asked. Numbers. We bring so many ships that even their clever weapons can't stop us all. We overwhelm them through sheer force. And we adjust our tactics. No more assuming our shields will protect us. We maintain distance, use our superior speed, and wear them down. While the Confederation prepared its massive fleet, Jake Morrison was halfway across the galaxy on his secret mission. He had taken a small, fast ship and a team of 5 specialists. Their first stop was a mining world called Dregnar, where intelligence suggested a resistance movement existed. The planet was bleak, covered in strip mines and processing facilities. The native population, a species called the Dreg, had been enslaved by the Confederation for 200 years. They mined valuable ores that the Confederation needed for ship construction. Jake and his team landed at a remote mining outpost and made contact with a Dreg named Karn, who led the local resistance cell. Karn was old and scarred, missing one of his 3 eyes from a mine accident that the Confederation had refused to treat properly. "You're the humans?" Karn asked in rough English. "The ones who fought the Confederation?" "We are," Jake replied. "And we want to help you fight them too." Karn laughed bitterly. "Fight? We have mining tools and desperation. The Confederation has warships and armies. We're slaves, not soldiers." "That can change," Jake said. "We can give you weapons, training, and most importantly, hope. When the Confederation's Grand Fleet attacks Earth, their forces will be stretched thin. That's when you strike. Hit the mines, the processing plants, disrupt their supply chains. And when the Confederation retaliates, they'll kill thousands of us." "They might," Jake admitted. "This is war, and war has casualties. But staying a slave forever means dying slowly anyway. At least this way, you die fighting for freedom." Karn was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. "What do you need from us?" "Coordination. We're visiting 17 resistance movements across Confederation space. When we give the signal, you all strike at once. Maximum chaos, maximum damage. Make them choose between fighting Earth or controlling their empire." Jake and his team spent 3 days on Dregnar, teaching the resistance fighters basic tactics and leaving them crates of weapons. Then they moved on to the next world and the next, spreading the seeds of rebellion. Back on Earth, Admiral Clark watched the construction of the Grand Fleet through long-range sensors. The scale was terrifying. Over 1,000 ships, some of them larger than anything humanity had ever imagined, gathering in Confederation space. "We can't win against that," Eric Hayes said quietly. "Even if every shot hits, we don't have enough ammunition to destroy them all." "I know," Clark replied. "That's why we're not going to fight them the way they expect." Colonel Kate Sullivan entered the command center looking grim. "Sir, I have the casualty projections. If that fleet reaches Earth and we engage them directly, we'll lose 90% of our forces within the first hour." "Which is why we won't engage them directly," Clark said. He pulled up a tactical display. "We fall back. We make them come to us into the inner solar system where we have fortifications and support, and we hold nothing back. Every weapon, every trick, everything we've been saving." "The Exodus Protocol?" Kate asked. Clark nodded. "If we lose, if Earth falls, at least some of humanity will survive. We have colony ships ready to evacuate essential personnel and genetic samples. They're hidden in the Kuiper Belt, ready to run if necessary." The thought of abandoning Earth was painful, but Clark was a realist. Sometimes survival meant knowing when to retreat. The Grand Fleet began its journey to Earth 3 weeks later. Supreme Commander Kelthor addressed his captains via holographic communication. "We are the sword of the Confederation. For 3,000 years we have been undefeated. One small planet will not change that. Yes, the humans are clever. Yes, they've hurt us. But today we bring overwhelming force. Today we remind the galaxy why the Confederation rules." The journey would take 10 days. On the 5th day, Jake's signal went out across Confederation space. 17 resistance movements struck simultaneously. Mines exploded. Processing plants burned. Supply convoys were ambushed. Communication networks were sabotaged. The Confederation was thrown into chaos. Kelthor received reports of uprisings across a dozen systems. Suddenly, ships that were supposed to reinforce the Grand Fleet were being diverted to deal with internal threats. "How many ships can we spare?" Kelthor demanded. "At least 200, Commander. The rebellions are widespread and coordinated. Someone is organizing them." "The humans," Kelthor said with certainty. "They're smarter than we gave them credit for." "Well, it doesn't matter. We still have 800 ships. More than enough to crush one planet." When the Grand Fleet finally arrived at Earth's solar system, they found it prepared for war. Every orbital platform was armed and active. The human fleet, reinforced with every ship that could fly, waited in formation near Earth's moon. And behind them, the planet itself bristled with ground-based weapons that could fire into space. Kelthor studied the defenses carefully. "They're going to make us fight for every meter. All ships maintain formation. Advance slowly. Use long-range weapons only. Don't let them draw us into close combat where their kinetic weapons are most effective." The battle began with a massive exchange of fire. The Confederation fleet launched thousands of plasma bolts from maximum range. The Earth ships returned fire with missiles and railgun rounds, but at this distance, the Confederation vessels could dodge most of them. "They're being smart," Clark observed. "They learned from the first battle. They're not rushing in." "Then we make them rush," Amy Chen said from the Freedom's bridge. "All ships fall back toward Earth, make it look like we're retreating." The human fleet began to withdraw, firing as they went. Kelthor watched suspiciously. "They're either running or trying to lure us in." "Either way, we advance," his tactical officer said. "If they run, we chase. If it's a trap, we're prepared." The Confederation fleet moved forward cautiously. The humans continued to fall back, past the moon toward Earth's orbital fortifications. The fighting intensified as they entered the range of Earth's fixed defenses. Suddenly, space around the Confederation fleet lit up with new contacts. Thousands of small objects appeared on their sensors, moving fast. "What are those?" Kelthor demanded. "Unknown, Commander. They're too small to be ships. They're spreading out, surrounding the fleet." The objects were autonomous drones, each one carrying a powerful explosive and a simple AI guidance system. Earth had built tens of thousands of them, hiding them in the outer solar system. Now they activated, swarming toward the Confederation vessels like angry insects. The drones were small and fast, almost impossible to target individually. The Confederation ships fired wildly, destroying hundreds of them. But there were too many. The drones crashed into ships, their explosives detonating against hulls. While each explosion did minimal damage, the cumulative effect was devastating. "All ships point defense systems to maximum," Kelthor ordered. "Focus on the drones." But while the Confederation focused on the swarm, Supreme Commander Kelthor watched as the ships from 17 different worlds joined the battle. His tactical display was chaos, showing enemy contacts from every direction. The Grand Fleet, which had seemed unstoppable days ago, was now surrounded and badly damaged. "Commander, we've lost over 400 ships," his tactical officer reported. "Another 200 are severely damaged. The humans and their allies are coordinating their attacks perfectly." Kelthor felt something he had never experienced in his long military career: doubt. The Confederation had always won through superior force and technology. But here, facing an enemy that refused to follow the expected rules of warfare, victory seemed impossible. "How many ships do we have combat ready?" he asked quietly. "Approximately 350, sir, and we're running low on ammunition. The supply lines were supposed to be secure, but with the rebellions across our territory, no reinforcements are coming." On Earth, Admiral Clark monitored the battle with grim satisfaction. The cost had been terrible. Earth had lost nearly 3/4 of its fleet. 15 orbital platforms were destroyed. Casualties numbered in the tens of thousands. But they had held. Against all odds, they had held. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Confederation flagship," the communications officer announced. "It's Supreme Commander Kelthor. He's requesting to speak with you directly." Clark straightened his uniform. "Put him through." Kelthor's image appeared on the main screen. He looked tired, his uniform scorched from a hull breach. Behind him, damage control teams worked frantically. Admiral Clark, Kelthor said. I am Supreme Commander Kelthor of the Confederation Military. I'm authorized to discuss terms. Terms? Clark raised an eyebrow. You attacked us. You tried to conquer us. And now you want to talk about terms? I am a soldier, Admiral. I follow orders. But I am also practical. This battle is destroying both our forces. My fleet is crippled. Your defenses are breaking. If we continue, we will both lose everything. What exactly are you proposing? A ceasefire. Immediate cessation of hostilities. Both sides withdraw and tend to their wounded. And then we negotiate a proper end to this war. Clark considered it. Every minute of fighting cost more lives, but he also knew that showing mercy now might be seen as weakness. I'll agree to a ceasefire on one condition, Clark said. Your fleet withdraws beyond Mars orbit immediately. You take your ships and you leave our solar system. Then and only then will we discuss peace. Kelthor's pride was visible in his expression. Being ordered to retreat was humiliating, but he was also smart enough to recognize reality. Agreed. We will withdraw within the hour. The transmission ended. Clark immediately opened a channel to all Earth forces. All units, ceasefire is in effect. Hold your positions. Let the enemy withdraw, but stay alert. If they make any aggressive moves, respond with full force. The Confederation fleet began its slow retreat. Damaged ships limped away from Earth, trailing debris and atmosphere. The Allied forces from the free worlds watched them go, their weapons still hot but holding fire. Amy Chen stood on the bridge of the Freedom, watching the enemy disappear. We did it, she said quietly. We actually did it. We survived, Jake Morrison replied from a communication link. He had returned just in time for the final battle, bringing the Allied fleet with him. But this isn't over. The Confederation is wounded but not dead. They'll regroup and eventually they might try again. Then we'll be ready, Amy said with conviction. The news of the ceasefire spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed travel. On Apex Prime, the High Council met in emergency session. The chamber that had once been filled with arrogant certainty was now divided and frightened. Ambassador Zekthar stood alone, facing angry questions from every direction. You promised us an easy victory. The Kresh ambassador clicked furiously. Instead, we've lost half our fleet and our empire is in rebellion. The humans were more formidable than intelligence suggested. Zekthar replied defensively. The humans humiliated us, another council member said. And worse, they inspired our subjects to rebel. Do you understand what you've done? You've destroyed 3,000 years of stability. We can rebuild, Zekthar insisted. We can crush the rebellions and attack Earth again with even more force. No, said the eldest council member, a being whose species had been part of the Confederation since its founding. Enough blood has been spilled. Enough resources wasted. We will negotiate with the humans. We will recognize their independence. And we will reform how we govern our own territories before we lose everything. That is surrender, Zekthar roared. That is wisdom, the elder replied. Something you clearly lack. Ambassador Zekthar, you are removed from this council. Security escort him out. Zekthar was dragged from the chamber, still shouting about human treachery and Confederation honor. The remaining council members looked at each other, all thinking the same thing: their empire would never be the same. 2 weeks later, Captain Lisa Gardner returned to Apex Prime, but this time she didn't come as a supplicant. She came with Admiral Clark, General Ryan Foster, and representatives from the 17 free world species. They arrived in a fleet of warships, a clear message that humanity was no longer asking for permission. The council chamber was transformed. Instead of the humans standing below while the council looked down at them, tables had been arranged in a circle. Everyone sat as equals. The new head of the council, Ambassador Relkin of the Kresh, opened the session. We are here to discuss terms of peace between the Confederation and the Free Worlds Alliance. Let us begin with acknowledging the obvious. The war was a mistake. The Confederation overreached, and we have paid dearly for it. Acknowledgement is a start, Clark said, but it's not enough. We want a formal treaty. Earth's complete independence, recognized by every Confederation member. No tribute, no restrictions, no interference in our internal affairs. Agreed, Relkin said, to the surprise of many. What else? Lisa spoke up. Freedom for any subjugated species that wants it. The Confederation can offer membership and protection, but it must be voluntary. No more conquered worlds, no more forced servitude. The council members murmured among themselves. This demand would fundamentally change the Confederation's structure. That will be difficult, Relkin admitted, but necessary. The old ways clearly don't work anymore. We agree with one condition. The transition must be gradual. Some species are not yet ready for full independence. We propose a 10-year process. 5 years, Lisa countered. Any species that wants freedom gets it within 5 years. That's more than fair. After hours of negotiation, a compromise was reached. The treaty was drafted and signed by all parties. Earth was recognized as a sovereign nation. The Free Worlds Alliance was officially acknowledged. And most importantly, a timeline was established for ending Confederation subjugation across the galaxy. As the humans prepared to leave Apex Prime, Supreme Commander Kelthor requested a private meeting with Admiral Clark. They met in a small observation room overlooking the station. "I wanted to tell you something," Kelthor said, as a soldier to another soldier. "You fought well. Better than anyone expected, so did you," Clark replied. "You adjusted quickly. If you had attacked us the way you did at the end, right from the start, we might have lost. But I didn't because I underestimated you. Everyone did. And that was our fatal mistake." Kelthor looked out at the stars. "I've been thinking about what made the difference. Why humanity won when so many others lost. And what conclusion did you reach? You never stopped fighting. Not just in this war, but throughout your entire history. You've spent thousands of years in conflict, learning, adapting, improving. While the Confederation enjoyed peace and grew soft, you were sharpening yourselves on the whetstone of constant struggle." Clark nodded slowly. "War shapes species. Sometimes it destroys them, but sometimes it makes them stronger. Humanity got strong not because we wanted to, but because we had to. And now maybe we can help other species find strength without having to suffer through what we did." "I hope so," Kelthor said. "The galaxy needs strong defenders. Perhaps humans can be that." 5 years later, the galaxy had transformed. The Confederation still existed, but it was now truly a confederation, a voluntary alliance rather than an empire. 23 former subject species had gained independence, and most had joined the Free Worlds Alliance. Earth had become the center of this new alliance. Admiral Jake Morrison, now promoted to fleet commander, oversaw joint military exercises involving 40 different species. They trained together, shared technology, and prepared to defend against any threat. The Memorial Plaza in New York stood as a testament to the war. Names of the fallen were carved into black stone. Amy Chen, who had died when the Freedom was destroyed in the final battle. Danny Brooks killed leading Marines in a boarding action. Eric Hayes, Chris Palmer, Nicole Stevens, and thousands of others who had given their lives for humanity's freedom. Lisa Gardner stood before the memorial on the anniversary of the ceasefire. She was now Earth's Secretary of Defense, responsible for maintaining humanity's military strength. The inscription above the names read, "They chose war. We chose victory. Never again will humanity kneel." A young reporter approached her. "Secretary Gardner,